Good evening, everyone. I hope all is well and you're enjoying the rain that we're having. As we all know, much needed in many, many ways. Um, I'm a longtime activist with the United Farm Workers, probably about a good 20 years now. And doing the march this past August that we did was for 335 miles. Was quite exciting, emotional. It was a pilgrimage. It was a pilgrimage, first and foremost, for all of us, with an agenda to get Governor Gavin Newsom to sign AB 2183, which he did. It took quite a bit of work, but nonetheless, he did sign it. That's the main thing. And prior to him signing, the farm workers, and this is the reason why the bill was put together. The farm workers, unlike you and I, how we get to vote, mail in from, absentee, in person, however it may be, the farm workers didn't have that right. Farm workers had to vote on their job sites. And there was a lot of intimidation to them having that freedom, the privacy to vote the way they wanted to. It would be threatened. They would get the glares, the stares, and a lot of them, their families were called in their home country. A lot of them in Mexico, their families were getting calls about, hey, if your family member votes the wrong way, they're going to be out of a job. But with AB 21 being signed now, that takes that away. So now they're able to vote pretty much the way that we do, and they're looking at doing card check. So this way they can they'll pass out cards and they can vote the way they want to, if they want to have a union or not. And then it goes to I think it's the National Labor Relations Board that would actually count the cards. It takes away the intimidation, the threats. They don't have I always tell people, I say, well, look at it like this. It'd be like voting in your cafeteria at work. It's the only place you can vote, and your boss is walking around looking over your shoulder. How would you feel? You'd walk out. You say, this is no good. This doesn't work. We're out of here. And this is how it was for the farm workers. This is how it was for them. They didn't have the rights that we have. And a lot of us take for granted. But now it's in the right direction because AB 2183 was signed at the end of September, which is awesome. The march was great. I wish everyone could have participated. 1 day, 1 mile, just to see what it's like to be in the fields. You're not far from fields in your own neighborhood there in Riverside County, Coachella Valley. There's a lot of problems, a lot of issues in Coachella Valley, in the fields there, a lot of squalid conditions and so forth. So when we hear about people, going to the Coachella Valley festivals, the Stagecoach Festival, it's a lot of money going in there, but not far from there, a lot of poverty. A lot of farm workers are living in squalid conditions. So it's one way if people in your neighborhood there, in your area, in the counties there, want to get involved in helping farm workers. You don't have to go far to Coachella Valley just to see what's going on and find out and see how you can help. What we're doing now is been focusing on voting, getting a lot of people, as well know, register to vote or re-register to vote, explaining to them about the importance of voting and the right to vote, to exercise that right, and the candidates to vote for, and just inform everybody. And that's the main reason why I'm here tonight, and thank you for inviting me, is because the organizers and other employees are busy out there. Roman Pinal, the organizer who was unable to attend tonight, is in the city of Lamont, which is a couple of hours from here. I'm in Monrovia in the San Gabriel Valley, and it's about a good 2 hours where Lamont is, and where Ramon has been doing a lot of get out the vote, rallying and so forth and so on for the candidates out that way. So is there anything that you would like to know about the UFW, the United Farm Workers, what we're doing, where we're headed. Right now, we've been focusing on the election. And with the passage of AB 2183, we're trying to get more organizers in the fields up and down the state of California. It's a big priority to get the farm workers to be unionized, as we all know the importance of unions. And it's something that is needed because, again, a lot of them are in squalid conditions. You know, a lot of what you hear with, poverty, a lot of people living 8, 9 to 10 people in a one-room, one-bedroom apartment. Yeah, that exists. That's out there. That's in the fields. You know, we talk about essential workers, but one that doesn't come up is farm workers. You know, while we were during the pandemic, it was either farm workers, either they work or no pay. And a lot of low wage earners are like that. You know, you don't work, you don't get paid. But the farm workers worked through the pandemic. They've worked through fires. They've had to deal with the smoke from the fires up north when you're up there raging just outside of Lake Tahoe. They have to deal with the heat. They have to deal with the rain. They have to deal with the cold. They have to deal with the mud. It's physical labor work, as we all know, very athletic physical labor work, a lot of stooping, bending, working overhead, depending on the type of fields that they're working in. But they had to work throughout the whole pandemic. There was no stop. You know, they had to. And none of us ever went to the store and the shelves were empty. They may not have had this or that, but we weren't hungry. We were able to go to a local farmer's market or Trader Joe's or Vaughn's or whatever store, and there's the food. Food was always there for us, even dairy products. Remember, the farm workers are also working in the dairies. So and because they're in this primarily in the Central Valley, it's, you know, here in Southern California, they're basically out of sight, out of mind. And that's why I really push for Coachella Valley, because they're not, yes, they are out of sight, out of mind there, but they can't be. They can't. They need to be recognized. They need to be supported. And again, this is why AB 2183 was so important. This is why we had the march. It was for more than just a signature. It was for the awareness that the farm workers are there. They work with, the pesticides. Pesticides drift is a huge, huge problem. Cesar Chavez was pushing to get regulations and so forth about the pesticides drift before he passed. It'll be 30 years ago, he's been gone now, next year. And it's still an issue. It's still a big issue. But life in the fields, it's no different than working where any of us have worked or are working or will work one day. It's all about, the love, morals, ethics, and respect for one another. And the dignity of these workers, if you ever are by one of the fields somewhere, you're driving on the 5 freeway up north, you see the fields. You're in Oxnard. My wife, Nancy, and I, we go to the food distribution that UFW does. They do one the first Sunday of the month in Oxnard. They do another one once a month in Lamont, in Wasco. And then there's another city there, it's maybe 2.5, 3 hours away from the San Gabriel Valley. But it's the farm workers helping the farm workers. Food is donated, and then everything's boxed, and we hand it out for those in need that come in. You don't have to be a farm worker to receive any of the foods. But it's just to let people to know, to get involved, and when you're interacting with farm workers, I'm telling you, for me, it's just wonderful. It's very meaningful activism, volunteering, and I volunteer in housing, for affordable housing. When people tell me affordable housing, my first response is a question: affordable for whom? Who are we talking about? The poor, the homeless, you know, ultra low income, poverty, low income, lower the middle income. Who are we talking about when you talk about low income or, affordable housing? Who are we talking about here? I've been involved in inclusionary housing with Jill Shook in Pasadena, which was very informative for me. I'm a big advocate for inclusionary zoning. Every city's housing element should have an IZ, inclusionary zoning policy that's mandatory, that's enforced. That should be in every city's housing element. I've worked with the homeless people. I've did a winter shelter with the Union Rescue Mission, which was very, very informative. But it's all, I do it because I care. Just like all of you, we do it, we get involved because we care. There's an issue. It comes from the heart. We're not looking for anything in return. We're not looking for an income, money, or anything in return. It's just, if anything, just a basic heartfelt thank you. That's it. Thank you for helping and caring. But see, the farm workers, it's, again, they're out of sight, out of mind, because we don't interact with them. We interact with custodians. We interact with people that work at McDonald's or the grocery stores or the car wash, or people who bus our tables in restaurants. We're interacting with them, but we don't interact with farm workers. So if you ever have that opportunity to interact with farm workers, please do it. Please do it. And hear their stories, hear what they have to say. They're people from all different walks of life. Sure, a number of them do not have legal status, but who cares? Who cares? They're people like you and I. They're human beings. They have feelings. They have feelings. And their lives are very, very important. Again, they put food on our tables. They worked while we were at home, fighting the quarantining ourselves, staying away, during the pandemic. But they were out there in the fields. They were out there in the fields, still working amongst one another. So they had, it's that fruits and vegetables and the dairy products that we see in the stores, we go and pick up, in a rush, we're taking our time. It begins with the hands of a farm worker. It begins with them in the fields. And when the growing season's over, their work is not done. Then they have to prepare the fields for the next harvest, or they'll move on to something else, another harvest somewhere else. And this is another reason why AB 23 was so important, because it gives them some protection, some rights. And if they do decide to unionize, especially with UFW, they also get not only worker protections, but they get health care, and they can get a good wage. For me, a living wage, a minimum wage, locally, city, county, state, the federal, should be minimum $20 an hour to start with, across the board. I have a graduate of USC, double major, sociology, religion. And one of the things that we learned in sociology was our rate of pay, what our employer pays us, is what they feel, how they feel that the value of our work is per hour. So if you're getting minimum wage, they're saying that's all your work is valued at. $15 an hour, maybe 16, whatever it may be. And if you're making $1 million a year, that's what they feel your work is worth financially. But that's, to me, that doesn't cut it. Then you say, well, living wage. Well, if you say that's what my work is valued at, a dollar rate, then how can that be living wage? So $20 an hour just to begin with a dollar increase a year to get to $25 an hour after 5 years. And it's not unreasonable. It is, and I know I'm a little off track here, but it all factors in to the work in the fields and across the board for low wage earners. If we put, you know, if companies invest more financially per hour, your workers are more productive. They're happier. They're in a better state of mind. They come to work happy, and they don't just come in because they just have to work. They come in because they're being paid fairly. They're able to save some money. They're able to go on a vacation. No one should work 40 or 50, 60 hours a week and not be able to go on a vacation every year. I was asked to speak at a certified nursing assistants about 4 or 5 months ago in Chatsworth because their contract negotiations shut down. And so I went there to speak at a rally, and I asked one of the union organizers there, I said, what do they do for vacation, the employees? And he said about 4 or 5 of them don't even go on vacation because they can't afford to go anywhere. And you work 50, 60 hours a week, you can't go anywhere for vacation? That's unheard of. That should not be that way. That should be a given. That's a guarantee for one and for all. No one should have to live that way. You should be able to save money to go on vacation and not just do an amusement park once a year, but to go on an honest, good, relaxing vacation somewhere in the country, or if they want to go home to their home country to go visit their family, they should be able to do that. And they should be able to save for a rainy day. And you can't do that with just making minimum wage 15, 16, 17 bucks an hour. And you surely cannot do that. I don't know where in the country for the minimum wage, was it $7.50 an hour, the federal minimum wage? Sure, in some states, cost of living is far less than here in California, yes. But still, how far is $7.50 an hour federal minimum wage going to take anyone? Anyone. That's not going to take them very far. And, you know, they talk about, well, every costs are going to have to go up, you know, minimum wage goes up. And, you know, I helped get minimum wage increased in Pasadena a few years ago. And we did it. We got it up to $15 an hour, but it was written in their policy there that if the cost of living went up a certain percent, I think it's 8, 9%, that the minimum wage would automatically go up to $16.04 an hour. And so it hit that threshold, so it went up. And this is what all cities need to do. Yeah, yes, it went up $1.04 an hour, which is great, but that's still struggling wages. That's still struggling wages. Even if it's 2 people in that house making $32 an hour, it's still with a family. No one should have to live that way. But see, this is the thing within the fields with the farm workers. A lot of them do piecemeal work, and some of them may not even make minimum wage. Others may make far more than minimum wage, but you got to hustle. That's a lot of work. It's a lot of work. You know, imagine carrying sacks of potatoes. You have to remember, you know, the farther out you go on the field, the further you got to probably come back carrying that sack of potatoes. So it's that physical demanding labor also that they have to deal with. So if, again, then one of the pushbacks of raising minimum wages, oh, the cost of everything has to go back up. Well, everything goes up anyways. Look what happened to gas. You know, look what happened to gas. It went way up overnight. And no one can tell me they blamed it on the war, the Russian and Ukraine war and all that. 6, 7 months later, you know, the prices started to come down, and then they say, well, you know, Southern California, we changed formulas and all that. It's corporate greed. It's corporate greed. And living in California, we all know that because they can do it. You know, Governor Brown said it. I think even Newsom said it. President Biden said, I'm going to check into this and see why it's going up. Well, we all know, but they never come back with an answer. It's always the same thing from the oil companies. A refinery blew up, one had to be fixed, you know, we had to shut this down, whatever it may be, changing formulas. And then they have record profits. So who's telling the truth and who's lying and who's just misleading us? Because they know they can get away with it. It's the same thing in the fields with the farmers. They know they can get away with it. They have contractors that will be the middle person. I'm a farm worker. There's the farmers. They have contractors in the middle. And so if anything happens, the owner, the farmer will go to the contractor and say, hey, it's on them. That's what they do. They wash their hands. It's on them. And there's a lot of issues, again, in the fields. There's a lot of sexual harassment, exploitation, and there's in the fields of female farm workers, and there's rape in the fields as well, even of men. Again, the farm workers need all our support in one way or another that you can help. And I know going to Bakersfield, Delano, or wherever it may be, Oxnard, it's a drive. I get that. I understand that. And this is one of the issues. But Coachella's not too far. You might want to take a look just to see, do some research and see what's happening there and see what the farm workers, the community may need. And sometimes it's just support, just to know that you're there and that you're realizing they are essential workers, and to thank them for working through the pandemic, working through the smoke from the fires, working through the heat, working through the rain and the mud and wherever it may be. You know, in Georgia, when we were on the march, a friend of mine was telling me, she runs the UFW Foundation. And Georgia, as small a state that is compared to California, they're having tremendous issues in the fields. One labor camp field, no bathrooms. Where are these farm workers supposed to go to the bathroom? Where do they clean up? Nothing. And there were a lot of fraud going on with the H-2A program, which is the program that would bring in foreign workers to work for X amount of months, and then they would have to leave to go back to their home country. But a lot of the H-2A workers were disappearing, and no one knows what happened to them. So this is, you know, life in the fields for farm workers is just not in California. It's in Washington State, it's in Oregon, it's in parts of the states of the Midwest, it's in New Jersey, it's in the Carolinas, and in north, I believe it's in North Carolina, maybe south, the tobacco fields. The farm workers working there, tobacco, the leaves full of nicotine, they have to wear suits and gloves to work the fields because of the toxicity of the leaves from the nicotine. And so can you imagine working in that heat, that humidity in one of those? They have to stop every so often and, you know, get rehydrated and stuff. But the United Farm Workers is a great union, and it is a union because it doesn't, a lot of people, you know, when you think of the United Auto Workers or Teamsters or AFL-CIO, automatically think of a union. The United Farm Workers is a union, and we're a union. And so we rely on, of course, you know, fundraising and donations and union dues and so forth. But that's part of how we have to self-fund or fund, you know, bring in funding to continue to exist. But mainly it's the protection of the farm workers. It's about the farm workers. It's not about the union. It's not about me. It's about the farm workers. And I'm telling you, if you ever get the chance to interact with farm workers, please do. I'll tell you something else. I also work with the National Day Labor Organizing Network in Delano. Their main office is in Pasadena. It's a great organization. And it's a place where day laborers can go to find out about their rights and to have protections. When you see the day laborers standing in front of Home Depot or Lowe's or some other lumber yard, they don't have any protections. And what happens quite often is somebody will come pick them up, promise them 20, 25 bucks an hour, have them work, you know, 8, 9 hours a day and say, well, I'll bring you back. Well, they'll work them for 8, 9 hours a day and they'll bring them back, but they'll say, here's your money, and they'll shortchange them significantly. They will not pay them the full amount. But when you go through Indolon, the National Day Labor Organizing Network, you'll have these protections. So if I want to hire someone through them. I have to tell them who I am, how much I'm going to pay, when I'm picking them up, when I'm bringing them back, and how we're going to go back and forth in the kind of work. And if I meet all of that, I don't pull anything shady, then I can remain coming back and hire again. But if I pull something shady at once, that's it. I cannot go back. But these are the protections that Indolon offers. And the main office is in Pasadena, but they have other locations across the country. It's an excellent organization. And the reason why I bring them up is the first time I walked in there, a good friend of mine about 5 years ago invited me there. She's a longtime employee. The minute I walked in, it was the job center was full of day laborers, all different backgrounds. And it was like walking on to a field of farm workers. So if you ever get a chance to interact with day laborers, it's like interacting with farm workers. They just want to be treated with respect as human beings, because remember, they have feelings as well, and they want to survive, and they want to put food on the table, a roof over their head. And you know, an interesting thing about farm workers, they struggle to make ends meet with food. And they're working these fields to put food on our tables, and they may be going without enough food. How ironic is that? That's ridiculous. That is ridiculous. And no one in this country should go to bed hungry. We hear this all the time. All of you are activists, one way or another. You're involved. And you know, what I'm telling you is nothing new. You know all this. You know all about low-wage earners. You know about homelessness. You know about the people living in the streets. And then, I'm a longtime activist for senior citizens or rights. No senior citizen should be living their golden years in the streets or in poverty or at the poverty level. No senior citizen who has worked 40, 50, 60 years, however many, should be struggling to make ends meet, should be concerned about how they're going to get their next meal, should be living in the streets. That's in this country, that should not even, that's one of those no-brainer things. It's a done deal. They should be housed and have supportive housing. They should have everything they need and then some. I fought with Jill Shook and her husband, Anthony Manuso, 5 years ago in Pasadena. We spent the night on the street at a vacant lot to fight for affordable housing for seniors, to get them off the streets. And we did it. We achieved that, and they broke ground about 5 months ago to start building these units in the Northwest Pasadena area to house senior citizens who are living in the streets. And as you all know, you're jumping through a lot of hoops, and we know that. And it took a lot of planning, but a lot of city council meetings and so forth and so on. But you can never get, we're going to get discouraged, but we have to lean on each other and fight through that discouragement, fight through the walls, and to fight against our opposition. We have to push back, and we'll have success. Letters do matter. Sending an email to someone, making a phone call, they do matter, because it's part of the numbers of, you add the people going in person, the ones who are calling in, the ones who are sending in emails, the ones who are out front somewhere protesting, the others that are just going to rallies or marches or whatever it may be. It all adds up. It all matters. I get on my soapbox a lot of times, but it's very passionate to me. It's like all of you, especially when it comes to low wage earners. It's troubling that all these years later, we're still, in a sense, in the same boat, the same predicament. It has to change. Most of us probably remember the the gas shortages back in the 80s and going forward into the 90s and stuff with the gas prices going up, or your license plate, it was odd or even days and so forth and so on. And what has changed? It's just the same. But we have to stand in solidarity for all these different causes. I have mine, and I know you have yours. Some of ours will cross over, but some won't. But we all are on the same page to help those in need in one way or another. It's to help people in need. And so we just come together as one, holding hands, arm in arm, and just say, hey, we're here for the long haul. We're not going anywhere, people, until we see some changes. And and that may mean chipping away, or it may be walking for 24 straight days, 335 miles for a signature that took almost a month after we finished walking to get. And that was a no-brainer. That should have never been on his desk to begin with. That should never have been on his desk. I was very unhappy about it, that we had to go through what we did to get that signature, when people at Starbucks can stand up front and try to organize, which is great. People at Amazon, the warehouses, can do the same, but the farm workers can't. The farm workers couldn't. Now they can. How is that possible that the farm workers could not organize the way they wanted to, vote the way they wanted to? Can you imagine, again, imagine trying to vote for a union and your boss is just staring at you, threatening you? One of the things about being a farm worker, it's just not their legal status. If they have it, that is if they're undocumented, that is a big concern, of course, and rightfully so. But see, if they get blackballed, if they're fired, they're blackballed. And if they try to go to another field to work, they're not going to hire them, because they're through the grapevine, no pun intended on that, but through the fields and everything, the contractors, they communicate with each other. Don't hire Daniel. He's a troublemaker, blah, 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 blah. Oh, by the way, don't hire his family either. And also, before you leave, don't hire their friends. So now I'm not working at so-and-so field anymore because I stood up for myself and fired. And so I can't get work anywhere else. What do I do? This is one of the problems that happens in the fields. Don't complain. Don't say anything. I know I sexually harassed you, but don't say nothing. You won't have a job. No one should have to work under those circumstances, especially in this country. We all have the right to stand up for ourselves. We all have the right to stand up for each other. And no one should be suppressed in any way, shape, or form. And no one's immigration status should be held over their head. And that happens not only in the fields, but any low-wage workers. It happens. And I know we all understand. We may not be in that position, never have been, but we can understand to the point where it's being held over their head. How dare these bosses do these to these people when they just want to work and earn an honest living for themselves and for their families. And no one should be threatened like that, because you lose your voice. What do? Speak up, risk getting fired, most likely, or just be quiet, look the other way so I can keep earning my small wages. And that's why we activists have to stick together and fight the good fight. A peaceful fight, peaceful marches, the way Mother Teresa did it, the way Gandhi did it, the way Caesar did it, the way Dr. King did it. It's just with peace and fighting, again, the good fight, and staying true to who we are and to the causes, and helping people rise above their situations, out of poverty, into housing, into better wages, in so many ways. For me, the farm workers, they're a family for me. I get emotional at times when I talk about them. I get emotional when I'm asked about the march, because it was not something to do. It was a cause. It was for La Casa. And I am very proud and honored to have walked those 335 miles. And it was so important to me that I walked every step of every mile of every day. It's 335 miles. And we walked through weeds, cobblestone, sand, dirt, grass, weeds knee deep. We walked along the edge of freeways and cars just zooming right by us. But we had to do what we needed to do. And we walked in triple digit heat. And I know all of you would have done the same thing. And for those who could not have been there, we know you were there in spirit. And the camaraderie that we met along the way, people helping us. They opened their homes for us to come and spend the night, host house. And because they believed in what we were doing. And we did it. Again, I know I've probably gone over my allotted time. I'm sorry on that. I apologize.
We can take a few questions.
Oh, most definitely. I'm sorry. I can go on and on, but I know I see my time. I know it's Monday night. Whatever. Yes, please ask away.
Anyone have any questions for Daniel? I am amazed at, that you did that walk in that heat, that unbearable heat this summer. I'm just, in awe that you guys did that. And we have to, thank you for doing that and for getting results from it.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I appreciate you saying that. And, we would tell people along the route who would give us food or drinks and open their homes to us. We're strangers staying in people's homes. And when we would leave, we would tell them thank you, but they would instantly turn around and say, no, thank you.
Yeah.
And that was one of the hardest things for me because, and it still is, because I see it as something I wanted to do for them. But just the heartfelt from the people we met along the way on how they appreciated what we did. And it's still a process for me to, I guess it's hard for me to explain because people have asked me, my wife has asked me, even towards the end of the march, how do you feel? How do you feel? And I couldn't explain. It's just eye-opening. It's just like, wow. It was amazing. Amazing.
Yeah. Angel has a question.
Mm-hmm. Where are you at, Angel? Oh, there you are.
Trying to unmute myself. Okay. So I don't have experience with farm workers per se, but me and my husband own a small plumbing company, and we have hired day laborers from Home Depot, from outside of Lowe's. And it has been very hard. I know that we would pick them up. They're very scared because they get burned a lot. I've had a gentleman who's gotten into the vehicle with me, looking at me like, and he's telling me a story about how he's gotten beaten up. He's had his money from the day before taken from him. So, for the day laborers, and then with the farm workers, I'm the secretary for the National Organization for Women, and we like to do a lot of fundraisers. And I know there are ladies in the field working as well.
There's a lot.
And so I was thinking, if I could get your contact information, because feminine products, it's things that most people don't think of. And it's freaking expensive. So if you're on a budget and you're working in a field, I was just hoping to get your information later maybe
Sure.
do a little now fundraiser for feminine
Sure.
products for the farm workers, because
Sure.
all the ladies out there.
Well, and Angel,
Mhm.
last month I was asking if they needed those for the women at the food distribution. So if you want to put something together, my wife Nancy and I'd be more than happy to take them up there with us, because they can use all sorts of products, and that was one of the things that came to my mind. It's good, it's excellent to get the clothing, the shoes, and so forth and so on, but the feminine products, you're right. It's been such a big issue over the past few years of being taxed on all of that and everything. Yes, I follow. I have a wife and 2 daughters we raised. So,
Okay, so
okay.
you're
So
aware.
that explains everything.
Yes. So great. Okay,
please.
I'll have to get your information.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, you're quite welcome.
Any other questions? Constance?
Yeah, if you would like to leave even just the website, or there must be some fundraising type things where people could pledge so much a month just to support the organization or certain programs that you're doing. We could, a lot of us could help with things like that.
Okay. What I'll do is I'll get information and I'll send it to Bill.
Okay.
It was
Perfect.
email and everything, and then they have the UFW Foundation. I know because we're organizing UFW campus organizing of the students. Cesar Chavez was real big on that. And so I was talking to a friend of mine on the march about starting that back up. So we've already been on the 5 Claremont schools, colleges. A couple of weeks ago, we spoke. We're getting ready to go to UCLA. We have a connection of students at UC Santa Cruz. What we're doing is it's finding student leaders who are interested in putting together a UFW support group on campus that is ongoing, not just a temporary thing, but ongoing. And then they do the outreach on campus and to support the farm workers in the ways that they are able to do from the colleges that they're at. And being at the Claremont colleges, again, I tell them Coachella's not far from here. Please take a look at Coachella. It's in your backyard. And I know it's out of sight, out of mind. It's a big thing with me in Southern California. And I get it. I understand all that. We don't have fields right here. We don't see that. We just see the final product in our grocery stores.
Yeah.
And that's true. That's life. But when you stop and take a look at it, it has to have a beginning from somewhere. It ends with us, but it begins with the farm workers.
Thank you, Daniel.
Oh, you're quite welcome.
We really appreciate you coming. I could listen to this for another hour or so, but we've got to move on with the meeting.
I know you have an agenda and I can fill up the rest of the night too.
I know. I wish we could listen to you instead. Thank you.
Well, I'll be more than happy to come back if you want, and hopefully we can do this in person one time.
Yeah.
I enjoy being in person. I'm a people person, and I enjoy that very much.
Thank you.
But I will let you get back to your meeting. Thank you for reaching out to the United Farm Workers. We do appreciate your support in any way that you're able to do it, even if it's through prayer at night, your thoughts, your well wishes in one way or another. But we, regardless of what you're involved in, stay involved. And this is one of the things I tell the young students. I said, we need the younger generations to rise up and get involved, because you cannot rely on us older individuals. I'll be 66 on Thursday. I tell them I cannot burn the candle at both ends anymore. Far from it. I can barely get one lit now. So we need the younger generations to rise up, because if we don't, the momentum dies out. And then what happens? We have all those in need are not getting the support that they need anymore. The numbers are not there to help them. So we have to get the younger generations involved in many, many ways. till we get all of this solved. All these issues need to be solved. And they can be done with good people like all of you working together in solidarity.
Yes.
Okay? Si se
Alright,
puede?
alright.
Si se puede. Adios. Muchas gracias. Many thank yous. Have a good night.